you're back for the second time. You've entered a very elite, prestigious club, so welcome.
I know. I thought I was the first, but I'm not.
I think Kier, Matt, and must be someone else. Maybe not actually. Me.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's new?
You're scratching. You should have a mic by now.
I do, but
it wasn't worth using it for this podcast.
No, it's not. It's not a seat. It's not one like you have. It's like a one that sits on your. It's a clip. I did have one and it broke because it was in my backpack. What's new? So I tore my lat tendon. So I've been, I guess I can't dunk and I can't deadlift. I can't really lift heavy. So it's like those are. I had to replace them. I guess. When something goes away, you have to replace it with something, and I guess I've replaced it with reading tendon books. So that's pretty much what I've been doing, and then posting memes on Instagram to make sales.
How's that going?
That's life. Oh, it's good, man. It's been really good. So yeah, I guess people want more insight into the lat tendon rehab and what I've learned and stuff, and I've just been like, I don't really care. I got it repaired. I got surgery, and I'm just going to go through the process. So it's been like 5 weeks, and I've just done range of motion. I haven't done too much. Like I have stitches on the front and stitches underneath. So like that's actually been kind of a pain, is dealing with the stitches.
Yeah,
because it'll open up and bleed, which I think we don't talk about too often when it's like post-surgical. It's like, let's start talking about the connective tissues and loading them, whatever. But it's like all the situations I've had, my skin is always the major problem. So letting that go away. But dude, I just look and I'm like, when I get back to doing things, assuming I don't rupture this again, I think it's unlikely that it would happen. I'm gonna be doing a lot of left-handed dunks, and I'm gonna probably not do
which side is the lat?
It was on my right arm.
Okay.
So yeah. I mean, I got a question of like, someone was like, how do I avoid risk of lat ruptures? And it's just like, dude, you don't do. Sorry, go ahead.
How did it happen? I actually don't know. I haven't. I was
doing a trap bar deadlift.
Okay.
It was like 550, and I've done 695 before. I guess I was fatter back then, but I'm like 550 was nothing. So I pulled up 495 like a toothpick. You know, that's what I say when it's easy. And then 550, it just snapped. And then I kind of grabbed my arm and went to the bathroom. I was with some of my friends, and they're just kind of like, "What's?" You know, they didn't think anything. And then I come back and I'm just like, "Yeah, I'm done for the day." And I actually took 2 weeks. I thought it was nothing. I took 2 weeks because of, you know, as it is as a man, you're like, I'm invincible. Why? I didn't hurt anything. I just, you know, I tweaked something. And then I posted the video after 2 weeks, and my friend Clifton Harsky, he actually tore his lat tendon. And he was like, dude, you need to go in and get that thing looked at. He's like, I'm pretty sure you tore your lat tendon. So I panicked when he told me that. And I'm like, dude, there's no way. And then I went in and get muscle tests from like this small Asian lady, ortho, and she's like, yeah, I'm 90% sure you didn't tear it. And it's like, okay, I don't believe you, but okay. And then I get ultrasound, and they're like, yeah, complete rupture.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow, nice.
Yeah, so yeah, and then it was interesting because he was like, I think we're just gonna leave it alone. I think you're just gonna be without a lat on your right side. And I was like, thrown off by that. Like, are you kidding? Do you know what I do? And he's like, yeah, but my friend works in the NFL, and he deals with a lot of lat ruptures, and they actually don't repair a lot of them. And I was like, do I really have to talk this guy into getting surgery? So the next day he actually talked to his friend, and he was like, yeah, he actually would repair that. So let's go ahead and do that.
And function wise, where were you at that stage?
I just didn't even test it. Like, I couldn't pick things up off the ground.
Yeah.
A week after I did it, I played pickup basketball, and I kind of got hit on my left side, so I had to stabilize on my right, and that just blew up my whole backside. And I was in pain for it was just kind of painful for like 2 days after that still. And that was like, I think part of it too was Terry's major. Like, Terry's major was aggravated. So like the thing was the lat was gone, and now the other muscles can take over because there's so many things going on back there. But I wasn't gonna take that route. Like the route I could have taken was like non-surgical, and then see how I feel after a few months.
Yeah.
At that point, the lat would have retracted so much more, and that's going to be hard to grab and put back up on the bone. So
Yeah. My brother tore one of his biceps recently. No, months and months ago. And yeah, he didn't get surgery on it. He just kind of trained away for a little while. It was just a freak accident. He was playing football, Gaelic football, and I think first training session of the season, and I think he either went to go and hand a guy off or like pull the ball out of his hands, like rip it out of his hands, and he just looked down and his bicep was was gone. Like so yeah, I did nothing with it. Like he knew it was clearly a rupture. Like, but I just told him over text, like, just do some gentle bicep curls when in the next few days, like super gentle, or even just like body weight, move your elbow around and stuff. And he waited a few weeks, and then he went in to see a surgeon, and they didn't advise, but they kind of leaned towards like, if you want to take the next 10 weeks off moving your arm, then get surgery. If you don't, you're going to be pretty much fine. So now he's back playing football and just didn't get surgery. But I feel like the lat is a much bigger thing.
Yeah, how do you do bicep? The thought is you just have other muscles that can take over, right?
Well, he still had one, so it wasn't so like he was okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So I don't know the ins and outs of it. I didn't look at scans or even assess him or anything. But he still had. But you just lost your lat, like, so.
Yeah. And I think I was trying to find, because I tried podcasts or even like PubMed, and there's like, it's all case reports. And there's one podcast with Eric Cressy. He's talked to some baseball surgeon in Chicago about lat tendon tear, which was pretty insightful. But it's like there's one podcast on the thing, and then all the research is like these case studies, and the people that do, there's so many cases they say non-operative.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that was complete rupture. And then I think it was also like 56-year-old people who don't really need a lat, so they're fine. And then I was looking at a lot of it was rotator cuff repair, and it was like a lat tendon transfer. And I was kept asking people, they never told me. I'm like, do they actually take off the lat tendon and put it as the rotator cuff for some of these old people? But I never got to the bottom of that. I don't know if you know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think the only place you're going to be seeing, football is probably football, and probably football. So rugby, you're not going to see too much otherwise.
Yeah. So, it's just like a freak accident, and I'm like, I've went down the many ways of why it happened, and I entertain it every once in a while, but it's like I'm gonna find a new reason every day. So let's just take it as it is and go from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you've been reading tendon books in the meantime.
Yeah, I think it was actually
got some goods for us.
Yeah, it was actually before I did that. I was what happened? I think I was I kind of realized I need to update like my jumper's knee science, because I've learned all this stuff about like interfascicular matrix and tendon cells and everything. And I go back to that old book, and it's like, I mean, it's useful stuff, but I'm like, I could take this so much further than where it is. And I got this book. It was called Human Tendons. It was from like the 90s maybe, and it was like a huge textbook. And there was so much like stuff in there that I had never seen. And then I came across like 20 more tendon books, or 25, and I'm like, I'm just gonna buy every single one. And I really had nothing else going on, so I'm like, let me just read through these. And I think I have like 3 more to do. And I actually have taken like no notes. Just read them. Things go in and out, so I forgot more than I whatever. But I think when I go back, I'm gonna go back, open them up, and then I can just scan through them and find the things that I like. One of the difficulties is they'll say things like, one book will say something and you're like, wow, that's really interesting. And another book will say the exact opposite. And it's like, how can you guys have these contradictions? And maybe it's length of time, because some of them are written in the 90s and then some of them are more recent.
No, it's not, because there's still, you'll listen to two of the top most respected researchers in the world today, and they will still say the exact opposite thing to each other.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
based on
Um,
their most current research. So I don't know.
yeah. And I I'm trying to get into it where I'm looking at really for me it's patellar tendon. I guess Achilles I care a little bit about, but you get upper body that I don't necessarily care. But um, and I'm just trying to look at the cases when you have pain. Is I'm trying to look at all the times when you get pain, like patellar tendon. People get pain standing. It's like why does your patellar tendon hurt standing? Why does it hurt when you sit down? Why does it hurt when you are cold? Why does it hurt when you? It doesn't hurt anymore when you warm up. And we say we have the phenomena that they're happening, but I want to get into
Why?
why is this the case? So yeah, I'm getting pretty deep into the structure, and then the structure can kind of tell you about the function. Um, and I think when I can understand this, I can give some pretty insightful nuggets to people, because yeah, I've just had those questions over the years, and
Yeah.
I've dealt with it myself. Like when I had it pretty bad, I would work like 8-hour shifts, and my knee would just hurt so bad standing. It's like
Yeah.
I'm not bending the thing; it's not a high load activity, but when you can just look at it from the case of what's going on in the tendon, the fluid buildup, or maybe the how it, if your patellar tendon is not working when you're standing, your knees are gonna buckle. So
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna be working
Mm-hmm.
in that moment. So yeah, it's kind of a lot to take in, and then that whole contradiction thing is such a pain because it's everywhere.
Yeah. The Yeah, same with my patellar tendon. I used to not go for a walk that day because I had training that night. Walking would fucking kill it if it was already slightly aggravated. Driving in the car, and I was working as a sales rep at the time for a sports supplements company. So I was just driving for hours a day, and my knee. I actually, when my knee stopped being sore, I because Kira used to, like, we couldn't go for a walk together. We couldn't go for a drive. She'd be like, we'd go for a spin to like half an hour away to go to a new coffee shop. I'd be like, no, I have a game tomorrow. So like I thought I hated driving and being in the car. And actually when my knee stopped being sore, I loved driving. I loved going for a spin again. So it was just like my life revolved around my tendon, but it was just so sore for a lot of these things. Yeah. What was I going to say? So you said structure dictates function, or indicate, like, you can learn a lot from structure versus function, and function. What can you tell us, not very smart people, about the differences in the structure between like patellar tendon and Achilles tendon, and where can we kind of learn from that?
Yeah, um, dude, those two are so similar compared to other tendons. It's like there's books on lower limb tendinopathies, and it's like patellar and Achilles are kind of lumped together because there are differences. I mean, I've talked a little bit about the differences like online, where the patellar has like that kind of straight up and down pull, and then the Achilles has like the slight twist. It is really straight up and down at the same time, but there's like a twist going on.
Yeah.
Um, and then, but compare those to like the rotator cuff, which I've heard the rotator cuff talk of like a sock, like when you if you get a partial tear or a hole in your rotator cuff, it's like a hole in a sock, so like the whole sock can work. You get a hole in like your patellar tendon, it's like you're probably going to be in pain, and it's going to be hard for that thing to work. Probably similar with Achilles. And then you have like upper body elbow tendons, which are compressed. Like a lot of compression goes on with those, with some mashing against the bone. So like that can cause issues there. Um, and it's like the whole concept of energy storage and release. Like that's patellar tendon, that's Achilles tendon. Some of the other tendons in your body, they're not really big energy store and release. It's like they're there just to connect, just so that the muscle can connect to the bone,
Yeah.
and maybe transition that force from.
Transferring energy rather than like being as elastic maybe as the Achilles.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so there's not too many like patellar Achilles, not too many differences, and I think you can look at who develops them. Like patellar is going to be people who are jumping, or people who use their patellar tendon a lot. Achilles tendons, anyone, because you use your Achilles your whole life.
Yeah.
You use it when you're walking. But the weird thing, so you start to get these you could see these structural problems like fatty infiltration, like fatty infiltration within the tendon, calcification within the tendon. And there's some stuff where it's like it's actually more prevalent in patellar quadriceps than Achilles, which for me was like that makes no sense at all. But I was like, I wonder if that's because these people stop using their quadriceps and patellar tendon as they get older, and just this disuse causes those issues. There's really interesting stuff with animals on like the disuse thing where they'll say wild animals like bears and horses and whatever, they won't develop a tendinopathy until you domesticate them and have them rest. And if you just put them in a cage, they develop tendinopathy. So the whole tissue is like use it or lose it. And then it's like find the perfect balance of using it the perfect right amount, and then not using it too much to where you develop tendinopathy. So it's like this weird middle ground. But it really goes against when you develop pain that lets immobilize. And it's like that's not what the tendon needs. I mean, Joe Cook has said it like you need load on it every day just to maintain structure or whatever. And people would take that and say you need to do isos every day or need to do a loading program every day. And it's like you don't. You just need to move. You just need to move. Yeah, you just need to move the tendon and get load through it. Now, if you have the tendon that's really tendinopathic, it's like you probably have areas that don't receive any load because it's stress shielded. So that's where the loading would come in. And you probably have the stress shielded areas more so as you get older. So that's where like slower loading can be beneficial. But yeah, it's like the disuse thing is really interesting because that's our natural thing to do. When you have patellar tendon pain, you just don't want to use it anymore. When I had it, I didn't want
any pain. You just want to not load that area.
Yeah. And it's like, that's usually the opposite of what you want to do. It's just finding that weird area within the middle of like, and you probably see this with people. Some people push too hard and some people don't push at all. It's like you get the neurotic people who get a little bit of pain. They don't want to push at all. And then you have the people that probably push too hard. So it's like I say don't be soft, but it's like don't be stupid, and finding the middle there. So that's where I think you said this before is like if you can just have someone to talk to and like have a look at you, like that can be really beneficial if you're trying to rehab on your own, because I give rehab advice to people on their own. And whenever I can get on a call with them, you can usually pick out the obvious thing and be like, okay, stop doing this. And they stop doing that and they get better.
Yeah. Big elephants in the room.
But it's hard. It's hard to pick it out for yourself. It's very hard to pick it out for yourself. And if you're an arrogant person, I've worked with a lot of arrogant people that they're not going to listen to anything I say. And I'm like, that's fine. Go and do all the passive interventions. I'm never going to get through to you. Maybe it's because of who I am, or you need to go find someone else you connect with better, resonate with better. But it just comes across with me. I'm like, man, you're an arrogant person. Why don't you just, and then they can say I'm arrogant because I think I know better, but I'm like, no, I actually do know better.
Yeah.
You don't know better. I know better.
I bet but
that arrogance is tough.
I bet you're getting less and less of that though, because what arrogant people need is authority. They need to look at someone like who it's clear that they know what they're talking about, and it's clear that they have had results. And arrogant people will often they don't, what arrogance is like, they don't, it's not that they won't listen to anyone, it's that they see themselves as better than everyone, so they don't want to listen to someone. But or if they're listening to someone, they want to be able to say to other people, I'm listening to this guy, and like it's clear that they're really good, you know. So you should have started to see a lot less of that.
I do definitely. It's like the one or two who I usually like meet in my personal life. You know, you meet them in your personal life. So like, it's like I guess when they don't really know you and they can just see your Instagram, it's like you can create this, they say, never meet your heroes.
Yeah.
And it's like, if I meet them in person already, I can never become a big figure in their head. Cause it's like, hey, I know this guy in person. I know his quirks, and then I know his weird mannerisms or whatever. But if they just see you online and they see, like in your case, you got 100K followers on IG, it's like, hey, he knows what he's talking about. There we go.
That's why, like, you have to, when you're especially when you're working in rehab, well, performance as well, you have to be an authority. It doesn't mean you're like trying to be arrogant or saying you know everything. But if you get clients coming into you and you can't speak as an authority, and again, it doesn't mean like I'm saying I am right, but clients will walk all over you. You'll say like you're not ready to go back running, and then they'll come in the next week and they won't have listened to you. They will be very sore again, and they will blame you. Your stuff that you gave me didn't work. And it's like, hang on here, bucko. Like, this is, you have to be able to call them out in their shit. So
I had one of the cases with tendons is metabolic health is awful. If you have bad metabolic health, it's terrible for your tendons. So, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be obese, because you can have people who are lean and have type 2 diabetes, have like out of control blood sugar. My mom's side's like that. My mom's side is like fairly lean, but there's some of them that have type 2 diabetes. They don't take care of it. And then my dad's side, there's quite a bit of type 2. There's a lot of obesity, but there's maybe not as much type 2. So it's like, I guess you can't just look at someone and say, lean, you're good metabolic health, or obese. I mean, obese, you're probably bad metabolic health anyways. But yeah, the leanness, it can be, you can be lean and have like a what's it called, hemoglobin A1C. It could be like through the roof, and that's not good for your soft tissues. It's not good for your tendons. I guess it's not good for your feet. It's not good for your eyes, for your kidneys, but it is definitely not good for your tendons. Not good for the collagen cross-linking. Not good for the cells. Not good for like the entire thing. And going back to picking out the obvious thing with people, I do these like 30-minute phone consultations. I did one the other day. It was like, maybe we got like 28 minutes in, and at the end, I kind of thought I knew this guy, but I guess not. And I was like, he's patellar tendon, and I'm like, okay, well, we kind of checked the boxes, all these things you need to be doing. But I'm like, the other thing is metabolic health. I'm like, you're probably a pretty lean guy, right? And he's like, no, I probably got like 20, 25 pounds to lose. And I was like, oh, dude. And he was thinking getting PRP and getting what other passive interventions. And I just called him out, like, bro, you just got to quit being fat, man.
Yeah.
Like you want to go get injected, and you want to go to the doctor and get all these passive things done. You need to take care of yourself. And I bet you, if you lost this extra weight, your tendon would feel better.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to be the one to try to change this behavior for you. You just got to do it, bro.
Yeah, but he probably needed to be like, that should be almost obvious to him in some ways, but it's hard for us to see that. But like, he needed you to say that to him. You can't baby your clients and not say this stuff, Now there's a way to say it. Like, there's a way to be. Some people might not want to hear that, but you have to be honest with them. You have to be an authority. And yeah, you have to say stuff. Same again with my brother. Actually, funnily enough, I just thought about this, but he's been saying for years that when he eats chocolate and a lot of bread, his elbows, like, he gets tendinopathy in his elbows, and painful knees as well. So that's funny. And I just thought about that now. And he also ruptured his biceps. So
yeah.
So
dude. Okay. So one of the difficulties with tendons is, so last winter? So like right now I'm in the process of trying to understand tendons, and last year I was in the process of trying to understand anterior knee, like patellofemoral pain, the plica, bursa, fat pad, everything going on anterior knee, and I understand it pretty well now. But one of the problems, and I guess I got this early on too, is like when I started looking into patellar tendinopathy and doing ISOs, it's like people would just get anterior knee pain and be like, should I do ISOs? And it's like, well, let's try to confirm it's a tendon, because you have so many other structures going on. And I wonder, I talked to Jordan Kilgannon, that pro dunker, long time ago, and he's like, if he eats McDonald's or something, his tendon blows up. His patellar tendon blows up. But I wonder, is this actually the tendon, or is it one of the other structures around? Because it could just be patellofemoral pain, like the weird pain around the knee. And that's usually associated with, I think that's associated with kind of inflammation, or what do they call that? Swelling? What's the term for that?
Yeah, maybe just inflammation. Like, yeah. Well, that's, you'd be more likely to think like, yeah, my joints will get sore when I'm starting to eat like shit.
Yeah.
But I personally, like, I know that the diagnosis around the tendinopathy versus something else at the knee is important, or of course around the Achilles or the ankle. Like, you're trying to understand what's actually going on. For me personally, with my tendon, my patellar tendon, there was no doubt in my mind ever that this was a patellar tendinopathy. It was like an open and close. Yeah. This is what it is. There's no doubt whatsoever. And there was actually no doubt from anyone I ever saw, like 100%, yes, has all the signs. So I would presume that someone like Jordan, who knows his body well, and I don't know him, but I presume he's he knows what the fuck is going on. I presume he would be saying like fairly accurately that this is when this is happening, like it's my tendon that is sore, not anything
Yeah.
else.
Yeah. I guess I've been lucky to deal with mostly every type of anterior thing. Like I've had last winter, like I go deer hunting in the winter here, and I went out for like 1 hour. It was freezing out. I had to leave because I was so cold. My knees hurt so bad. My knees were just frozen. And then I came in. I had to rush. I did a squat. I think I did a 135-pound squat for warm up, and I think I was at the bottom. My fat pad, man, it just pinched, and it was like it was sharp pain. I had to stop training, and I dealt with that for like maybe 2 weeks, and I just let it settle and it went away. But dude, that was a crazy pain, like so unlike the patellar tendon. So for my ability to relate to someone now of like feeling the fat pad pain, okay, I know what that's like. And then patellofemoral, I've had off and on, but it's usually been acute cases where I'm like, I just overload a little bit, and then it's like tough to sleep at night because I could find the right position or get my quads in a spot where I feel like they're not pulling on the kneecap excessively. I don't know what it is, but it just goes away. And some people deal with patellofemoral for a long time,
for years. Yeah.
But yeah, that's the thing with the diagnosis is you're always like, I think it's helpful for exclusion. Like they say, imaging is so helpful for exclusion because it's like my knee hurts. If you go get that thing imaged, you could find like your patella is fractured. Yeah. And I'm not going to rehab you through a patella fracture. I mean, we probably can get around most of those things by just gradually helping you, but go and find out if there's something seriously wrong. And then it's like excluding that by getting the imaging or getting the doctor to look at it. And then we can go on and say, let's follow this smart loading.
Yeah. But that's the elephant in the room thing. Like if I kind of have a 3-session rule type thing where if I'm pretty sure this is what's going on, and I've seen predictable and repeatable results that when it's like a patellar tendon, when it's X, Y, and Z, when we do these type of things, now we'll try and individualize it as much as possible. Like you should see improvements. And 3 sessions later, we've tweaked things, we've tried different things, and it's just not getting better. That's when I'm like, okay, let's have a look at either I'll send you to someone else who I feel like will look at this with a different set of eyes, or go and get some imaging done because it's worthwhile. Now, if that was a professional athlete, I would do that very soon. I would do that probably earlier than the 3 sessions. Well, depends on the structure, depends on the person as well, because sometimes they might get that in their head then. But yeah, actually, yeah, probably, yeah, it could be worth sending for imaging sooner. Talk a bit more about the stress shielding.
Yeah. So I guess the idea is the tendon is going to find a way to work. It's going to find a way to, if you're talking patellar tendon, it's going to find a way to transition what's happening from the quad to the tibia, or I guess tibia to the quad. It's going to find a way to work. And you get these pockets where you might have a like partial tear, you might have degeneration. And then the idea is those just aren't loaded. And it's just loading the areas around that. And actually the area that's not loaded would start to behave more like, I guess it would behave more like cartilage, because it's getting compressed by everything around it. So you don't necessarily want that in a tendon, because now that area is just like dysfunctional. Yeah. They would say back, Jill Cook, Sean Dawkins would say it's mechanically silent, like that area is mechanically silent, and you can't heal that area. It's just basically inert and dead, not dead, but like it's inert. So, and then Keith Barr comes out and he's like, heavy iso. So let's try to get that thing back. And I guess he's seen that through MRIs. I guess ultrasound too. Yeah, he's seen it through MRI and ultrasound, where that area you can see on those images that there's like a hole there, or the collagen is not well aligned. Mm-hmm. And I guess Keith has seen it where it's become well aligned collagen again. Only like 2 case studies to my knowledge. So it's like, it's very few. And then some of it's been in like rats, where they did a rat study, really interesting, where they punched a hole in the, I think it was a patellar. They punched a hole in the patellar tendon.
I thought you were going to say they punched a rat.
No.
I just fucking saw what happened. Just bit the shit out of a
rat. And then they did, one group did like dynamic loading, one group did isometric loading, and they saw the isometrics got that got that stress relaxation effect. Someone on Twitter was interesting. He was like, why are we using this study? No one ever develops tendinopathy by punching a hole in their tendon. But I think obviously you're not going to draw complete parallels without any human. But dude, I think I got this on one of my reels the other day. I posted a Keith Barr video, which like got a lot of views, but this guy was like, we can't use animal models for tendons. And then I was like, yes, we can. Mostly everything we know about tendons is animal models. We're not going to a healthy human, we're not going to biopsy their tendon, or we're not going to put a healthy person through the loading intervention, or even a tendinopathic one. We're going to learn it through like rabbits and mice and rats, because I guess it's more ethical to euthanize those animals, or horses. We
absolutely can, because it's just a narrative. You're not saying this study done on rats definitely means this with humans, but it's something. It's not nothing. Like
and it's like the structure. I mean, the structure is very similar. Like the horse tendons you look at, very similar to Achilles. Not completely. They have 4 legs. We only run on 2, but the guy was arguing, and then he's like, I'd go read this study and link to this. Like, it was like limitations of animal models for tendinopathy. And I'm like, did this dude just Google this study and bring it up? Like, I've read this thing, and this actually does not support your case. But yeah, you have to, the things you learn about tendons, like they do some, talking about that hole punch thing to develop tendinopathy, they do some things with animals, which I guess you can take for humans. Like, some of it is injecting chemicals into the tendon. Like, they inject collagenase, or they inject matrix MMPs, which people can have an overrun of those in their body, which degrades their tendons. So they research that, or they research uphill running, downhill running, loading the animal for hours, just not giving them a break. Disuse, they just put them in a cage and have them chill, and that's terrible for them. They do a lot of things to just invoke tendinopathy, and you can just look at the way they're invoking tendinopathy and then take that for a human and be like, okay, avoid these things. Like, one of them was the antibiotic fluoroquinolone. I don't know if they give those to people anymore, but that is really correlated with a tendon rupture. So that's one thing. It's like, I would think if you're taking antibiotics in general, that would not be very beneficial for tendons. But it is useful. You can look at all the ways they're invoking tendinopathy in the animal and be like, let me just kind of avoid these things that they're doing in the animals to maybe keep my tendons healthier.
Yeah, absolutely. Back to Patellar versus Achilles, not necessarily structure now, but there's some differences, but they're very similar. What about rehab-wise? Where are you on that?
Well, rehab, you're the Achilles guy now, so people just go to you.
But where are you on Achilles versus?
Yeah. So the thing
rehab?
with, this is what I do online. If anyone ever comes to me for Achilles, I'm glad you have your program, because I'm like, buy David Gray's program. That's usually where I go.
Thank you. And they come back to you 6 weeks later and say, I feel great.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, actually. I just say it, and I'm like,
they do.
Just
3 weeks. 3 weeks later.
So I think it's got to be that so much out there is Achilles. Like, Achilles is much more popular than Patellar. Yeah, like I guess
it's mainstream.
Well, more people get it than Patellar, I guess. You know.
Mm-hmm.
So and just from what I've seen, like I get so researcher heavy looking at what the researchers do, and they're just like, do the loading program.
Yeah.
Then that's it. And I'm like, you look at the bones of the feet, or I guess, like, just go back to the structure. And it's like, there could be some other thing going on than just, let's load the Achilles with the heavy iso and then progress into calf raises up and down, and then progress into the pogo hops, and then there you go, back to sports. And I guess it does work. I mean, we can't say that it doesn't work. It does work for a lot of people, but people will run into issues with that. So like Patellar, as far as just look at the structure, is like, what do you have? Do you have the knee, which like goes up and down, a little bit of rotation? I guess it can be affected what's happening at the hip, can be affected what's happening at the foot. I would kind of think, though, if the hip's messed up or the biomechanics of the way that you move is really poor, I don't know if you'd be developing the patellar tendinopathy, because that's usually the person who can put a lot of force through the patellar tendon, which probably means they have to have pretty decent biomechanics. So I would more be thinking like patellofemoral pain or some
Yeah.
other issue. I don't know if you agree with that.
Yeah, I do. I think it's the other way around. I think when you get patellar tendinopathy, that has a massive influence on your biomechanics, on your gait cycle, how you move, how you don't want to bend your knee. And when you don't flex your knee, you don't flex your ankle, and you don't flex your hip. The knee is in between. The knee, like the the knee issues, poorly rehabbed knee issues, tendinopathies, knee pain, ACL injuries, meniscus, anything, any of that stuff, anything poorly rehabbed knees that don't want to flex will fuck up everything. Knees, ankles, a lot of people will end up with patellar tendinopathy and then pick up an Achilles tendinopathy as well. Loads. That happened to me. You stop bending at the knee joint, which means you stop bending at the ankle and the hip. So I would say it's the other way around, not necessarily that. I would say, yeah, you pick up the tendinopathy in your patellar and then you start to pick up problems everywhere else because you actually don't load into that side at all. Why would you want to?
Yeah, yeah. Um, and this is what, maybe it's confirmation bias. Who cares if I use confirmation bias? I'm going to use it anyways. The Seth O'Neill had a video. He referenced this study. I kind of looked into it. It was a pretty small sample size, but it was like the people who had patellar tendinopathy and it was through ultrasound, which is probably the way to determine stiffness of the tendon. Because you can't, using a dynamic exercise to determine stiffness, like the strength or it doesn't elongate that much for how much you're pulling on it. That would be a stiffer structure.
Mm-hmm.
The patellar gets stiffer with patellar tendinopathy, which would make sense. You don't bend it anymore. That whole thing, like, you can still perform, you're just not going to be bending your knee. It's really stiff. But then they were looking at Achilles and they saw that people with Achilles tendinopathy actually had a more compliant tendon. So it actually strained more, which was interesting to me. That I don't know if that's something you see. So I used the phrase of I said Jolly Rancher patellar because it got stiff, and then bubblegum Achilles because it got compliance. Because my friend Mike Kozak in Columbus, Ohio, he trains a lot of younger athletes and some females. He's like, dude, they just got a bubblegum Achilles, man. Like, the thing doesn't, like, their heel just drops when they're trying to do a sprint or something. He's like, I'm trying to get that thing to engage and actually use it. Do you see that with Achilles or?
Yeah, but I didn't think about it in that way with regards to tendinopathies. You know what I mean? I didn't think about it, the Achilles actually gets more compliant with a tendinopathy. I just see some people that can't use their Achilles very well in general. So I'll have to think more about that and keep an eye out for that.
Karen Silvernagel is like a Achilles rupture researcher, I think, in Delaware. She said, I think it's when you get tendinopathy and rupture that the tendon actually gets longer too. Like, the tendon lengthens out, which I guess would kind of be counterintuitive, because you'd think you rupture and it gets healed. You would think it would constrict and kind of, like, you know what I mean? Be more stiff. But she was like, the tendon actually gets longer, and that's something you want to avoid in rehab. But then I was like, is that every tendon, or is that just Achilles that it would get longer?
I don't know. But
it was interesting. And then I'm like, what are the interventions to decrease tendon lengthening? It's like, I guess the only thing you really have is muscle strength. So the muscle can pull on that thing, and the tendon is probably, the way I look at it is like, for you to start adapting a muscle adapts pretty quick. You can get gains in muscle strength or losses in muscle strength pretty fast. And I think the tendon is the lagging one. Like, the tendon, as you increase muscle strength, the tendon will also get stiffer, will get stronger, but it's going to take longer. And the same way, if your muscle gets super weak, the tendon is probably going to start losing its I guess, stiffness characteristics, I would think, but a little bit slower. So I look at it, it's kind of like a lagging thing. I think I was trying to look at delayed onset, when people get delayed onset muscle soreness, because it's pretty common. You get delayed onset muscle soreness if you haven't done anything in a while. And I was thinking, when you look at when someone develops a tendinopathy, they get tendinopathy on this one day, but the cycle of that is they've caused structural damage weeks or months prior. And then the tendon pain comes. It's like they call it the iceberg theory, where the top of the iceberg is pain, and all the
Pain.
way at the bottom is like the training errors, and then the
Yeah.
structural damage, and then finally you develop pain. And I'm like, I was wondering, because the tendon is not the I guess the nerves going into the tendon are mostly on the outside. There's definitely not, it's not as sensitive as a muscle to changes. Like muscle, you know what's going on because the thing is really innervated, and a lot of blood flow, a lot of activity. The tendon is not so much. The tendon exists in like this low oxygen state of like near death, and it just is able to it's able to like you're running a marathon, your calf muscle can just work like isometrically, and your Achilles can exist there and do a ton of loading and unloading in this low oxygen state. Like you're just beating the thing, and it's able to withstand it.
Yeah.
So the way I look at things is like the tendon is like this structure that can go through a lot, but you won't really know what's going on until it's kind of too late.
Yeah.
Because that pain will come in later. So yeah, I was looking at the muscle thing, and I'm like, the muscle pretty much tells you. But when someone gets some delayed onset muscle soreness, I wonder if that's also going along with structural problems with your tendon. I wonder if you get structural problems with your tendon, because I kind of look at why did you get delayed onset muscle soreness? It's usually you weren't accustomed to the activity. You went in and did the activity, and I'm thinking that the coordination of the muscle isn't good. Like you're kind of not fresh with the coordination, so that's probably why you're getting all this damage there. But then I'm like, if the muscle's not working that well, are you also yanking on the tendon more just to make up for it?
Yeah.
And then the next day or the next 2 days, you're like, well, my muscle is blown, like it hurts. And I'm like, I wonder if you image your tendon, would there be structural problems there or not? It's just kind of a thought I've had, but yeah.
Yeah, maybe. It just depends. I suppose that's where like people who are doing activities that are slightly newer to them or they haven't done in a while, it's so important that they're getting their rest, because like you go and play basketball, if you haven't played in 3 years, you're going to wake up very sore the next day and probably the day after. So the presumption is like, yeah, of course. If your muscle's feeling like that, your tendon is like that. It's just not feeling like that. But if you go again the next day and again the next day, and then a few weeks later, maybe something's starting to crop up. So I think you're
yeah. And then I look at strain. So like this idea of tendon strain, which I think last time we talked, I'm like, I'm not a smart dude. I know the tendon or whatever. And then I remember you said it. You said that what did you say? I'm sneaky smart or something. And I remembered that. I don't do well with compliments, but every once in a while I get a compliment. I remember it. And I did appreciate that, because I'm like, you know what? And actually, the more
smart.
people, you know what though, the more people I deal with, I'm like, man, some of you people just aren't smart. Some of you people are just not smart. And yeah, it's rough to deal with that. It's like I don't know. Conversation done. Just move on, or just let me take the reins on what you're doing and just do what I tell you. But
I heard a quote the other day. I actually don't know the quote, but it was something not as good as this, but it was something like at some stage persistence starts to look like greatness, or something like that, which is just you've just spent years learning and now you're in the top one. No, sorry. Yeah, easily the top 1%. The top 10 people in the world that know shit about tendons. Probably top 20. So like, I don't know, if you just started following you today on Instagram, some young kid, they're like, this guy knows everything. He's a genius. But it's just persistence. It's definitely not being an idiot. You have to have a base level of intelligence, but that plus persistence starts to look like greatness. That's not the quote, but something like that.
You know, I've seen it the other day. It was like, if you play the game and think in terms of decades, there's no way you could lose.
Exactly.
And I'm like, I guess I've been in the online business for over a decade. The tendon thing, I've been in for like 3 years. So anytime I get frustrated about why I don't understand things with tendons, I'm just like, dude, I've been doing this for 3 years. Like, I will get there. I just hope I don't lose the love for it by the time the decade's up, because maybe at some point it'll happen. But so going back to the delayed onset muscle soreness thing causing the tendon thing, the tendon strain. So this idea of tendon strain, I said I'm not too intelligent, because it's taken me a really long time to understand tendon strain. And it's basically just elongation. Like the tendon is when the tendon's relaxed, it's sitting there crimped, like it has this little bend. The collagen has a little bend to it. And then to get rid of the crimp, you just give it a little bit of stress, a little bit of pull from the muscle, or usually from the muscle, I guess the joint position, because the tendon's responding to what the bone is doing and what the muscle's doing. So I guess on either end, you can get a pull, and that's going to get rid of the crimp. It's going to get a strain through the tendon. The problem is usually when you get older, or I guess you could look at a young child who's still growing, their skeleton is still growing. They're getting a pull on their tendon by just their bones growing. So they're getting tendon adaptation without muscle activation because they're growing. As you get older, your skeleton is done growing. The only way for you to maintain tendon is to get muscle to pull on it. So tendon strain is you pull on the tendon, and then how much does it elongate? And it can only elongate, like, this is so variable in the research, 8%, 10%, 15% before you actually rupture the thing.
Yeah.
So it doesn't elongate too much from its normal length. So I look at the ATG system, and the ATG is all about, so let's do the ATG split squat, go super deep into this position. And then you would think, okay, deep position, you're getting a lot of pull on the tendon. It's good for the tendon. You need to train deep ranges. But I don't think that's happening at all, because the tendon is stiffer than the muscle. So for you to make up that joint position, you're just going to be straining the muscle more because they're in series. So you get to a deep ATG split squat, you're pulling the life out of your muscle, and I don't think you're getting tendon strain as much as you could if you're just doing a higher level split squat, loaded as heavy as possible, because now your muscle is going to be pulling harder on that. It's more advantageous too, because a deep position of a split squat is not advantageous for your quad. If you get to a higher position where you can like load it up as heavy as possible, really advantageous for your muscle, which means you're going to be pulling on your tendon more, getting more tendon elongation, which, depending on the health of your tendon, if your tendon is very unhealthy, you do not want to be getting a lot of elongation. It's probably going to blow it up. But assuming you've progressed that and you can handle it, you get elongation. So I was also wondering, with that whole delayed onset muscle soreness thing, you get the muscle damage tapping into the tendon. I wonder, because you talk about tendon strain needs a lot of pull from the muscle. I wonder what could be happening there if that was happening. Would it be that the muscle, like if the muscle can't do the job, the tendon will do the job. The tendon will start to strain more. So I'm like, if the muscle's already not doing the job and it's having a hard time and it's like getting to that point of, like, as the muscle sucks at the coordination of the activity,
there's inhibition there.
It would probably shorten more, right? It would probably get.
I don't know the physiology, but I do know, like, and you do know, very obviously, when you work with clients with patellar tendinopathy in particular, their quads waste away. It's the most visually obvious thing.
Yeah.
They end up with no quads. But with an Achilles tendinopathy, you often see people with big calves, which is very interesting to me. So, like, and now maybe that's because they did 10 bazillion calf raises, but also a lot of like people who do bodybuilding or just try and get bigger in the gym say, I struggle to build my calves. I can't make my calves grow. But people I see people all the time with Achilles tendinopathies who already have big calves. I rarely see people with patellar tendinopathy who have really strong quads. So there's a big difference for me there between those two tendons. And just going back to what you're saying about the ATG stuff, I think that speaks to like joint health. Fully flex your knees, fully flex your ankles, fully flex your hips, keep your joints moving really well. Obviously that can cause pain in the joints as well. Anything could be anything progressively, but like get your joints moving through full range of motion. But for tendon health, particularly again with patellar tendon, as you know more than anyone, training like that middle range and going much heavier is going to be much better for it.
Yeah. And we talk about strain, and we're really only getting the tensile load, like pulling on the tendon elongation, but you also have the compressive load. And that's one thought that's out there, is that the bottom of the patella bone has kind of that bump on it. And it's like, if you get to deep positions, you could be causing this compression. And that's usually because the tendon's mashing against the bone. And that's usually where you see the hole of the tendon is the backside of the tendon.
Yeah.
And it's like the deep stuff. How much you really need that, I guess. If you're trying to load it heavy, yes, you want to make sure your joints can get to deep positions to like be able to bend your knee fully. But yeah, when you're trying to get to like let's adapt the tendon as much as possible. Yeah, I every once in a while I go on the Reddit. There's a Reddit page for knees over toes. And they used to tag me a lot. People get patellar tendon. They'd be like, get Jake Tuura's program, get Jake Tuura. And it was not my influence at all. It was just like people got good results. They would say that. But yeah, the banter these kids have on tendon issues, it's so bad. They're so clueless.
Yeah.
And it's usually just the anecdotes of like, well, this worked for me, and go do the backwards walking for your quad or for your patellar tendon. But yeah, it's it does bring a lot of like I was interested on that the calf thing, because I think I asked you earlier and you said you didn't really know, like maybe a year ago, about people with the quad wasting and the patellar, but then they also said the calf wasting and the Achilles, and I'm like, is that really even a thing, or did the researchers say, like, I've never seen them actually measure the girth.
It
of
is
the
a
calf,
thing. It is a thing after a while. I think it starts to waste away again because people just stop actually loading that. But a lot of athletes, that's, I think, because if they looked at that research, I bet you they do it with older people again who, like, yeah, they can't even do a single calf raise. But I mean athletes who are still playing like sport at a decent level, not necessarily pro athletes, but a lot of pro athletes as well. You can look very clearly at basketballers or people who pick up patellar tendinopathies and they've had it for a while and their quads have wasted away, despite doing all this quad work. Or their quad on one side, it's visually smaller, but that's not often the case with an Achilles.
Mm-hmm.
It's really not. Yeah, which is also good for patellar tendon rehab because it's so clear. You're just like, yeah, we just need to get you loading the quad. There's so much inhibition around that muscle, which it still wrecks my head why a nervous system would do this. It's like your tendon is so sore, but you refuse to use your quads. Why are you doing this? It's illogical. Yeah. But like that's pretty much all injuries with, or issues. It's not an injury. All issues in the body, when there's pain around the area, they just find a way to come around it. So like if you give a nervous system a choice, like you have a right patellar tendinopathy, it's very sore. I'm going to use my left leg as much as possible. But if you force me to use my right leg, I'm going to try and not use that area, but that ends up loading the tendon more. So it's like, fuck it. If you could just talk to the nervous system and say like, what are you doing? But, but the best way of talking to it is probably like just loading it. Isometrics, mid-range, whatever it is, get the quad firing, reduce inhibition, and now they start to bend their knee again. That's how you improve biomechanics with a patellar tendon, is load the quad, reduce inhibition. Now you bend your knee. With an Achilles, it's similar, but what often improves Achilles tendinopathies, and I'm not dogmatic about this, or I'm not trying to be biased, because I'm very clearly saying patellar tendon, like, do your mid-range isometrics, get the quads firing, but I just don't see the same thing with the calves, or at least not the soleus muscle. I think opening up the foot, especially when you're talking about compression and maybe insertional Achilles, if that heel bone is stuck and it's in more of like a tucked under posterior tilted heel bone, and you try and bend your knee, you're going to have no dorsiflexion and you're just smashing the Achilles against the bone. Like, that needs to get the foot moving. The heel bone and the rear foot has to start moving.
But I thought it was a KOT calf raise was the key for Achilles bulletproofing. This is one thing too that's so like tendon strain took me a while to get. So like, and I think I have a pretty good grasp on tendon strain. Back in the day, Jill was saying like the muscle strength is protective of tendon, or like muscular endurance is even protective of tendon. And I just took it. I'm like, great, let's go strengthen the muscle. But I really didn't get it. I really did not understand it. And I think the idea of tendon strain, or muscle and tendon strain, that really like brought it home for me of like, if you're going to play basketball, you jump 40 inches and your quad muscle is not able to do anything. It's like tiny. Mm-hmm. You're just going to be yanking on the tendon more. That's all you're going to be doing. And you're going to be making up for it. And maybe what you used to do as an 8% strain of your patellar is now a 10%, and then it's a 12%, and then it's a 15%. And then if you keep going and your quad is absolutely nothing, you probably have a pretty good chance. Now, rupture is super rare, but I'm like, you are giving yourself a good chance for rupture. Maybe I shouldn't say that, because some very smart people are like, the link between tendinopathy and rupture is not there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I just don't know. But people, they'll say ruptures, the people who rupture, they already have this degeneration in the first place. They already have a compromised tendon.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you get a compromised tendon. Many ways to get a compromised tendon. Like, as we said, disuse, antibiotics, whatever. But the compromised tendon could probably be coming from that muscle has done nothing for way too long, and you just been yanking the life out of the tendon. And then at some point it just goes. I was
pain or not pain or not pain. Like,
yeah,
pain or not pain.
And then it's almost like I wonder that the pain comes in, and the idea is pain is protective. Pain is stopping you from loading the tendon further to get to rupture. But you have those cases where, like, you'll take away pain. And I guess you can take away pain with like a cortisone shot, right?
Yeah.
Do you really want to be doing that? Because now you're loading a compromised tendon that doesn't want to be loaded. You just decrease pain. It's the same with the warm-up effect. If you have a really compromised bad tendon and you just warm up a bit, now you're able to go play. And it's like, you keep doing that, you should probably follow a rehab program so you just get rid of the pain in the first place. But I don't want to fear people because ruptures are like so rare. Mm-hmm. But and we also don't really know the exact mechanism for the rupture. So, but it does put it in my head, and I'm like, just rehab the thing well so you don't have that pain, and you're probably in a better case.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen a few cases of people rehabbing patellar tendinopathy and getting good, and then it's like they rupture it. And it's like, oh, that sucks. Time to rehab again.
Yeah, that sucks. The warm-up effect, like the analgesic effect that you're saying, I think that's the biggest, how do I put this? That's the biggest problem with tendon rehab, is the fact that you feel better when you warm up. Because all people, they'll find a couple of exercises that make them feel a bit better, or they'll just go and start playing basketball and they feel better after 15 minutes. And that's something that allows you to just get through things. It allows you feel just good enough. And that's the same, I bet you, if you like had some way to be a fly on the wall, anyone who bought your program and you saw them doing the leg extension exercise, isometric leg extension, let's say, and you were watching them, you'll see them for the first week, like play around with the weight, put it up, and then they start feeling better. And I bet you they don't keep putting up the weight because they feel like, oh, this, I feel good when I do this weight. But actually, it's not about the analgesic effect. It's about making the muscles stronger. And if you were in bodybuilding circles or powerlifting, it would be about lifting more, getting more tension through the muscle. So people, that I fell into that trap for a long time. This stuff makes me just feel good enough to get through the next session. And actually, I'm adamant with my clients now, like adamant. If you're doing patellar tendon rehab and you're using leg extension, you're using these type of squats, if in 3 months' time you're not lifting more on this exercise or holding it for longer or whatever, or doing an extra couple of sets, like, this is pointless. Don't do it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've had a lot of things Jill has said were really useful, and then some of them really were bad. Like one of them was, I think this was 2-3 years ago. I had a guy, patellar tendon pain, started my program, heavy isos, just like heavy isos, go. And does them, knee blew up for like 2 weeks afterwards. And because Jill was like, you do heavy, tendons love heavy isos. And I don't think his tendon was in a terrible spot in the first place. Yeah. So I told him just scale back a little bit, start lighter. And I think probably what happened was, if you get on a heavy iso, let's just say arbitrary number, if the tendon's going to strain like 10% because you're pulling on it so much, a really bad tendon doesn't want to take 10% strain. Like, that is terrible for it. So he can only handle 2%, and then the next session 3, and then 4 or 5, and the strain's just going to come from the pin on the leg extension. You're going to go heavier and heavier. And then you get to the point where that's health. The muscle is now stronger. The tendon's more healthy. It can handle a high level of strain. The dude I was listening to, there's this one guy, he's pretty big on Instagram, has like a podcast. He's done like 3 episodes on tendons for athletes, tendon strength and whatever. Just awful, man. It was like, it's just all he knows is like the lifting for, because you go on, there's that one study and they're like, how to increase tendon strength and stiffness. And it's like, lift 80% load plus or 90% load plus. It's like this meta-analysis, this systematic review, whatever. And I would agree for a rehab patient. for rehab, you want to increase the strength of your tendon. Let's get to doing heavy loaded things. That's what you need to get strength, to strengthen the tendon, probably reorient collagen, get the structure healthier. But it's like, okay, that's for tendon strength for those rehab people. But I'm looking at someone who's never had tendon pain, and they're just a freak athlete. And I'm like, if we just kind of reverse the whole process, it's like this guy has a super stiff and strong tendon. He did not get that from heavy isos because he never did heavy isos a day in his life. So when you start to put that thought in, it's like, how do athletes get stronger tendons? Heavy isometrics. It's like,
so this guy is talking about not with tendinopathies,
not rehab, not rehab,
just tendons in
just
general.
How to take, basically, and the phrase, I love when people say this, how to preferentially train the tendon over the muscle.
Yeah.
When you say the term preferentially, like, come on, bro. I just don't like that word. And it's like, but at the same time, preferentially train the tendon over the muscle is like, in order for you to train the tendon, it means you have to load the muscle even heavier than what you already are doing. But yeah, that whole thing of I think this is where when you have someone in pain and they need to rehab, let's go and do this, increase strength, stiffness, whatever. But you have someone who's completely healthy and they're at the peak level of athleticism, elite athlete. Do we really need to be doing heavy isos? I don't think currently at this stage, I would say let's give an intervention when there's not an intervention needed.
Just good training at that stage. It's just good. If isometric training makes up part of good training for whatever reason, but it doesn't need to be tendon targeted at the tendon. It's just good training, I think.
I love listening to shows like that because I just walk around with my head held high and I'm like, wow, my knowledge is so much better than this.
I don't. That's why I don't listen to Chris that coaches with us wrote to me the other day because I've said several times on. I think we were sending videos on TikTok about other shit, and he said, I thought you said you don't consume content," and I said, "No, I don't consume content in the fitness industry, not like Pokemon content, WWE, and all this other shit that comes up on my TikTok. I definitely consume that content, but just fitness industry content, I don't consume."
And then you start getting this misguided approach. Like back when I first started doing isos and making it kind of like a thing that I was doing for tendons, it's like people started to think the only way to strengthen tendons is isometrics, and it's like, no, that's not at all. And then even the case, just take specificity of like, what do you want your tendon to be able to do? And it's usually like the really, really hard explosive maneuvers.
Yeah.
And isometrics are not preparing you for that.
Yeah.
And anyone who's got to the peak level of the explosive maneuvers, they didn't get it through heavy isos.
Yeah.
They got it from that activity. And for some reason, this person developed pain. So let's rehab the person through, probably using heavy isos.
Yeah. I think isos are great. Like I think now it's probably getting to the stage where people think it's just initially at least like something heavy and something slow is probably good, and it doesn't necessarily have to be isometric. But isometrics, I think now Keith Barr might argue with that, but I don't know. But isometrics are great in terms of like it takes away a little bit of the thinking. It takes away. It's just easier to implement. It's easier to measure. It's easier to do a lot of things. It's also easier to find maybe a position where it's not causing that much pain and start there and just stay there. So isometrics are good in that fashion, but they're definitely not the be all and end all. Just one other thing with regards to the rehab of the patellar tendon versus the Achilles. So what kind of peak forces are going through the quads in like sprinting, do you know?
No clue, but it's pretty uncommon, isn't it, for someone to develop patellar tendon as a sprinter? Or...
I don't mean with regards to tendinopathy. Just like I just with regards to like getting people back to plyos. Like if you think about the Achilles, if you think about the soleus muscle, like even in slow jogging, there could be 4 or 5 times body. 4 or 5 times body weight going through the soleus, but. So, like, basically what I'm trying to say is with regards to the Achilles, I think it's so important. You can't do bodyweight calf raises and then go back running. Even to a slow jog, there's just such a spike there, which is what a lot of people do. But with the patellar tendon, I do see, and I know you have plyos in your program, and I would obviously use plyos with all my patellar tendon clients, but I do see a lot of people who actually do get success just making the quads a shit ton stronger and progressively loading them, and they seem to go back to sport and they're okay even if they skip a really good plyometric program. I just don't often see that with the Achilles at all.
Okay, yeah. I've seen that with the soleus, like just whenever you jog or sprint, like just blowing up with the demands, and then like hamstrings don't really come in till like you get a lot faster.
Yeah. So I wonder
quads,
what the quads is. I must have a look
quads,
at that.
yeah. I just don't know, but yeah. As far as like just a linear sprint, I mean, the way I look at, and I think the loading goes along with, because looking at the extreme of someone in pain, I think loading goes along with pain, where it's like if you load it, if you have a sensitive area and you increase the load, you're probably going to increase pain. So I would just take it. I've never seen the peak forces going through the quad in a run. I have no clue what that would be, but it seems like I just wouldn't recommend like a very fast sprint for someone early in patellar tendon rehab. Like I think that's actually provoked pain in quite a few people.
Yeah.
So it's more just like a slow jog is probably fine. But I look at patellar tendon of like the jumping and the landing is blowing that thing up, and then it's the stopping.
Yeah.
The I think Jill said that once, where it's like the Achilles is like a spring for storage and release, and the patellars to withstand.
Yeah.
So I almost look at like the activities that blow up patellar. Jumping is like you're just shoving your knees forward basically, and then coming off, and then landing the same thing, and then cutting the same thing. When you're running, you don't really have that stopping that you need.
No,
it's like
it's that
you're cycling
continuous
through. Yeah, and then it would be decel. I think the patellar person, if they get in like a flying sprint, and then if they don't have a lot of room to decel, that's probably going to blow up the patellar.
Yeah,
you know,
I used to hate decel. I used to jump off my right leg. I used to change direction a lot on my right leg, and then I developed tendinopathy on my right knee, and I had to. I changed like my jump, because we don't get a chance to, in Gaelic football or hurling, you're running into a jump. You rarely get a chance to do like a squat jump, let's say. So, I had to start to change how I decelerated, like my penultimate step. I had to start to change. I changed everything. And also what was terrible for me was kicking when it was very bad. So we run and we kick like you're going to kick a rugby ball if you're running and kicking a rugby ball or something. But I kicked off my left leg. So I had to plant my right leg and be super stable on that right leg while moving at high speed, and then swing my left leg through the air and kick the ball. And that used to kill me. That used to kill me so much. So that's another like decel, a plant like there. All those things used to kill my patellar tendon so bad.
My friend in Chicago, Physical Fusion is the gym. They do flying sprints, but it's a small gym. So they have this massive pad on the wall, the crash pad. That's how the patellar tendon rehab athlete can do a flying sprint and just run into the pad. There's no decel needed.
Exactly. And that pad is effectively being their patellar tendon. It's just like, stop.
Yeah.
I have this research here that I put in I use in my workshop. So the hamstrings, 3.49 meters per second. The hamstrings 2.10 times body weight. The soleus 6.7 times body weight, and then the vasti is 4.7 times body weight at 3.49 meters per second. So like the hamstring is super low. And then in fast running, not even super fast running, but 9 meters per second, the hamstring spikes up to 9 times body weight. The soleus goes up to 7.3 times body weight, and the quads then 4.8. So the quads actually doesn't go up much higher from super slow running to pretty fast running. The soleus doesn't actually spike that much higher. It goes from 6 times to 7.3. But the hamstring goes from 2 times to like 9 times body weight. Now you'll see different studies given different numbers, but in general, I think it trends in that direction. So basically, you can jog a hamstring tear or strain. You can get them jogging pretty early, and sprinting is going to be a big issue for them. But for the calf issue or an Achilles issue, jogging is going to be the hardest. Almost getting them back into that slower jogging is going to be really difficult for them. And it seems like for the quads, like you're going to be okay regardless, it's going to be the jumping and the deceleration that's going to be the hardest there.
I wonder, because patellofemoral, some of that patellofemoral research, if you take a rear foot strike and go forefoot, like it decreases patellofemoral. So I wonder if that would also decrease quad. It probably would decrease quad if you took someone, if they're just doing a slow jog, heel striking.
Yeah.
Let's try more. If that's aggravating patellar tendon, patellofemoral, try more of a forefoot or not letting the heel strike. But then the thing is, now you're going to blow up your Achilles tendon because you're not used to that. But the whole thing, all that soleus force going through, then you have that some of those videos where it's like the KOT calf raise, and they're saying the muscle with the strongest pull in the world, the soleus KOT. It's like, dude, it's the strongest muscle in the world, and you're holding a 25-pound dumbbell doing a calf raise.
Yeah, it's madness.
Somebody has to use their brain and say, this don't make sense.
Yeah.
How is this training the soleus?
Yeah.
But I think me and you are the only ones that have questioned that.
But they don't. There's hopefully not the only ones, but they don't have plyometrics really as part of their program, So not that I've seen. I haven't seen their program, but I don't see any of their coaches doing anything other than I can see how the sled pulls can be helpful because, like, I actually, funnily enough, I used to do when I first started figuring out what made my patellar tendon feel good, which wasn't off the back of research. It was off the back of doing loads of shit and seeing what helped. It was like isometrics, which I didn't even do for the patellar tendon. I was doing Chinese martial arts training, and they used to put you in a horse stance. Have you ever seen horse stance?
Yeah.
And make you hold it for 5 minutes. And and my quads were getting smoked. I was like, my fucking quad is working here. What's going on? So and then I used to put, at the end of like gym sessions, I used to put 5 or 10 minutes on the clock and just push and pull a sled for cardio. And again, I was like, my quads feel good here. My knee feels good. So it was just like heavy, slow, or isometric stuff. And there was no reasoning behind that for me. It was just like, this feels good.
I think ATG has been, I don't know if you agree, it's probably been a net positive because people in pain are now loading. It's the claims that I'm like, I don't like some of those claims. It kind of turns me off. And then the lack of like a plyometric progression has really blown a lot of people's pains up because they stop doing the sport. They do the slow loading, feel amazing, try to hop back in, and it just blows up again. I mean, I kind of had the same. I stopped dunking and playing basketball for like 2 years, and I just lifted and became a fat powerlifter. And then I got back into jumping, and I could jump, but like once a week, and that was it because maybe not once a week. I was doing a lot of plyos in the weight room, but dunking was always more stress than actual, like, I guess hurdle hops or box jumps or whatever. But the whole change in load of like just lifting for many years got my patellar tendon, my quads crazy strong compared to where they were when I was in bad pain.
That's what I meant about the plyo. A lot of people could actually get away with the patellar tendon just getting really strong through the quads and then going playing basketball. They can get away with it. It's not advisable, but people do get away with that.
Yeah.
But not with the Achilles. Very rarely. If you go back into like just calf raises and then sprinting or playing sport, if you have a bad Achilles, it's not going to work.
I have a question for you. I don't know how long you wanted to keep going on.
Whatever. Yeah. Don't ask me something that I don't know the answer to.
No, I talked to Matt Watson the other day about ruptures, like the mechanism for a rupture. You still there? My thing froze.
No, I'm here. Yeah.
Okay. So you had one guy on your show. I forgot who this guy was, but I saw it on Twitter. He was talking about where his head is during a rupture. So he was on your show, and you asked him, maybe you can remember who this was. You asked him if an Achilles person should do a seated calf raise or a standing calf raise. You remember
Colin
that?
Griffin.
Yeah, that's who it was. He said about where his head is at with tendon ruptures. And he had like a list of 5 things. And one of them, I think there was, I forget 3 of them, but I know 2 of them. One of them was you have a degeneration in the first place, like it's already structurally compromised. Because if it's strong, you're not going to rupture the thing. The tendon is the amount of collagen and the amount of integrity that a tendon has is crazy. But when you start to damage the fibrils and whatever, then now it's compromised. But he said Achilles rupture. is the heel's dropping. So like you're getting a pull on the tendon there. And then the calf, I think this is what he said. I might be wrong actually, but it's what I remember. The calf engages, but it engages like a little bit too late.
Yeah.
So it's like you're getting a pull on the tendon at the bone, and it's already lengthened. And then by the time the muscle needs to engage to pull the heel back up through the tendon, but it's already lengthened too much. The muscle decides to pull, and now boom, it snaps.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you like have any thoughts on that.
Well, if you look at ACL ruptures, they're starting to think that that's what's happening as well as a delay. When you see this big, huge valgus position that ACL, like that you would associate with ACLs, they think that actually the rupture's already maybe occurred at that stage. I don't know about all of the time, and actually we obviously don't know, but yeah, they're starting to potentially think that like ACLs are going really, really quickly, really early. That's why a huge part of ACL rehab and potentially prehab, even though like it's a stupid word, but like it's just good training, which you can consider prehab. You don't want to train for something that hasn't happened. You just want to train well, is learning to pre-tension really well. Because once the foot hits the floor and you're waiting for your muscles to turn on in the right amount and co-contract, it's too late. So I think you would probably start to maybe think about ruptures in the same way, and Achilles tendon rupture in the same way that it's not always a strength thing. It's a strength thing maybe, but also a timing thing, and that's why I think fatigue is such a big factor for ruptures, or injuries in general, ACLs, hamstring tears, Achilles tendon ruptures. Fatigue has to be such a massive factor, because fatigue is not just going to change your potential motor output, but actually the timing of the contraction, which is such an important thing if you look at these high-speed actions, I think.
Mm-hmm. And that's like, so I think first time I saw that was Franz Bosch, where it was like those processes, the brain doesn't do anything, right?
Yeah, like, no, it's
like
way too slow. Yeah, it's overcoming muscle slack. And that's where Bosch's argument is around injury and performance. These co-contractions are so important. And that's why he actually is not a fan of heavy counter movement, weightlifting stuff, which I would say he's mostly incorrect in terms of what's happening. Oh no, sorry, not what's happening. Like the results that we can get by training people in deeper ranges and making them stronger. We've all seen athletes just in performance go through the roof with that stuff. But I would say that he's definitely onto something with the mechanism. Not some of the time, he's onto something. It's just hard to know where the line is between making someone stronger through a full range versus potentially making it harmful, that they are now developing a need for an external load to overcome muscle slack, or it's changing the timing or something like that. So it's not I don't think it's a big stretch to think that like heavy, slow weightlifting all the time is changing how the system overcomes muscle slack and that need for external load to help it do that. I just think there's I don't know, the potential benefit versus negative of getting you stronger. And look, it probably just boils down to getting people stronger through in deeper ranges and stronger in general, plus actually training plyometrics, making sure that they're doing both.
Don't go full Bosch.
Don't go full Bosch, but like, I definitely don't think go full Bosch, but also appreciate the thought process behind it, because he's probably onto something.
I had this question on that, the pre-tensioning. And so I heard this about ACL tears, and it was like, it's a fatigue issue, the brain. And it was actually Raymond Verheyen. He's like, I don't know if you heard of him, the World Football Academy. Yeah. But I think he was incorrect, because it was brain driven, the ACL thing. He's like, you fatigue the athlete, the moment the brain needs to engage, it can't.
Yeah.
And I'm like, isn't that process though too slow for the brain to?
Yeah. See, he's probably right. He probably means nervous system, like reflexive system. A lot of people, even I, make that mistake of saying brain when I actually don't mean the brain. Yeah. I don't mean like a top down approach. I mean like, Yeah, I mean,
Um,
these reflexive systems. I
so
presume that's what he's saying, but maybe not. Maybe he actually thinks it's a brain thing.
yeah, and like from what you've seen, that's equally affected by, I guess fatigue is a very broad term, but that's equally like fatigue would affect the reflexes and the brain similar.
Um, I don't know the answer to that, but fatigue will affect definitely firing patterns. Um, yeah, but even like think about think about a basketball game. Think about game 6 in World Series or something like this, and you look at players. Fatigue is setting in. Like it's such a high pressure situation. You start to see players make mistakes in terms of handling. Like I just pass you the ball, and for some reason I made a mistake that I would never drop that ball ever in a million years. But now I did make a mistake for some reason. It's a high pressure situation. I'm mentally fatigued in terms of I've had to concentrate so hard for this entire game and for all the previous games. It's at the end of a long season, and I start to make mistakes. There's visual, maybe fatigue, like visually. There's motor patterns that are not quite as sharp. You can see visually players actually making mistakes with their skills that they shouldn't and wouldn't ever make. So I think it's fairly safe to say that these things are happening under the hood as well, like in terms of the muscle firing patterns around the quads, around the Achilles, around the entire body. There's and stress can change muscle firing patterns as well. So like this is all of this is interplayed. You can definitely see it. Everyone can see it. They can see it in Wimbledon tennis. When stress comes on, some people just buckle. So like absolutely fatigue is going to be a factor, and absolutely it's going to affect your skills, which we can see visually, but also underneath the hood, muscle firing patterns. I can't see how it wouldn't.
Mm-hmm. So the question I got was if taking a person who's like 5 foot tall versus someone who's 7 foot tall and being like, that speed, would it change?
What do you mean? I don't
The
understand the
speed. So
question.
like if they have that moment where the calf muscle has to engage, it's the same exact maneuver, but this person has shorter limbs than this person does.
Yeah.
It was like, does that change? And I was like, I have no clue.
Well, I still don't think I understand the question, but of course it's different.
But I was
It
saying like, so the speed of, because how does this actually happen? The muscle, the pre-tensioning, is it like muscle senses what's going on, goes to like spinal cord, comes back? Is it a signal like that? What is this? I don't need. I'm just not a muscle physiology guy, so I don't necessarily
Yeah,
know.
either am I, but it's this. It's basically a history of there's vestibular system, there's spinal cord reflexes that are happening, and these muscles are going to. It's why variety of landings would be so important as well. So the muscles are getting a chance to learn how much tension they need. If you ever look at a bodybuilder trying to jump, like they have no ability to have the right amount of tension in their bodies. It's not just that people think it's just a tendon thing. It's so, like you were saying earlier. That's so annoying when people think that like, there's so much going on. So yeah, it's the whole system. It's the vestibular system. It's the reflexive spinal cord. Blah 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 blah. And they're trying to coordinate together, have the right amount of tension. But what they do know is that the best the best athletes in the world, or what we think we know is the best athletes in the world, will have higher amounts of pre-tensioning in something like a drop jump before the foot hits the floor, especially in muscles that can contract quicker, like rec fem, gastrocs, hamstrings, probably. Then muscles like soleus and glute max have a higher peak force, so that they need the ground and they need that little bit of time so that they can spike and push really hard or contract really hard. But other muscles are built to actually pre-tension. Now, they will all pre-tension, but other muscles are built to pre-tension a little bit better. I can send you a couple of studies that I have on that, which will show you
Oh,
that.
yeah. Okay. So you said like the spinal reflexes. So like the question, I guess, to maybe explain better, if you have the 5 foot guy, and if it is a spinal thing, so like the spinal reflexes have to go to the muscle, it has to go from the spine to the muscle.
So what's the question?
The question
why is what's a 5 foot guy?
The question was, if the guy's 5 foot tall, let's say it has to travel, that spinal reflex has to travel 1 foot. If you're 7 feet tall, that spinal reflex has to travel 2 feet.
Okay,
that was what the question. Yeah, that's the question. And I was like, he's like, do you have more chance of an injury or a rupture if you have like a taller, longer limbed athlete? And I was like,
so Colin actually said this, did he? Or questioned this?
No, it wasn't Colin. It was some random dude on IG. And I was like,
okay.
I was like, that's interesting, but I have no clue.
That is interesting. But
I feel like we could be way off on. Probably need to brush up on like how does the pretension actually work? You know, how does that actually work? And if it is like a distance thing, that it would be a limiting factor. Then it's like, okay, if it is a distance that has to travel, then yes, you don't want to be 12 feet tall. You'll probably rupture your Achilles.
But their system has dealt with being that tall for a long time.
Okay,
I'm going to put right down on my list to get like some kind of physiologist who I would love to get Franz Bosch on sometime if I could. So, because I'm a movement guy, I know just enough about stuff. But like what I like to talk about and do is things that I can visually see. You know what I mean? Like that's why I like talking about the movement of the bones and the joints. Not because I can see bones, but like you can see the joint and you can see the bone movement. But even when it comes to muscles, for me, I don't love talking about muscles that much because I can see if you're flexing and extending your elbow, but I can't see like what muscle is doing that well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And same with the tendon. So that's why I love, when I look at movement, I look mostly at the joints. And then I layer muscles on top of that, and then tendons with that. And then I think fascia has a massive role to play. That's why I don't want to answer that question around not that I have the answer around the tall and the short, because a lot of this is around tensegrity, and we know nothing about that. And that opens up like massive debates and arguments when you talk about fascia online, because people make fascia their god, or else they pretend that it doesn't exist. And I think a lot of this, we're talking about muscle, but a lot of this could be like the fascia, the tensegrity of the entire system, in which case that would be even faster than, potentially faster than some of these muscular contractions, because the fascia has actually just been tensioned by being in a lengthened position, and that's potentially very protective.
Mm-hmm. There was so you're saying on glute. So there was a paper I don't know if I could find it again. It was old, but it was like they compared the glute, so the glute muscle, and then the tendon, and then the I think it was the quad muscle and the tendon, the soleus and the tendon, and it was like if it's a fatter muscle, shorter tendon, like the glute, they're like, this is reliant for you to get a lot of output out of this thing. It relies on just the juice you can get from the nervous system, or the juice you can get from the brain. But then as you get down into the soleus, it was like all pretension. And then it was like the quad was like middle ground. Mm-hmm. But it was something Franz Bosch said, I think, in his book, where he was like, you have that glute muscle. So like he was like, if he's going to support heavy lifting and bodybuilding, he's going to support it for the glute muscle.
Yeah.
Not for the calf, not for the quad, but like probably his only muscle was probably the glute. Yeah. That was about it. But yeah, that just made me think of like the pre-tensioning thing, and then the world does seem to be on that side of let's get muscles bigger and every muscle bigger and stronger.
Yeah.
But it's like, well, does it matter though? Like, could we look at how long the muscle is versus the tendon, and that tells us how we're going to interact to get the bones to do what we want them to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think if you look at he looks at muscles like the rec fem, the hamstrings, as very much like transferring energy. So there's going to be much more, potentially in high speed movement, much more of an isometric contraction around there, so that they can, like, if you look at think of a rec fem, I think it's a really good muscle to think about, which is pretty straight down and attaching onto the hip here, and then attaching onto the knee. So potentially like transferring energy from the hip to the knee, So, and not like this, it's a longer, thinner muscle. the hamstrings will be longer and thinner. The glute max is shorter and thicker, so potentially built for force production versus like just transfer of energy. So that's Bosch's theory there, and I think he's probably spot on, to be honest, because even look at sprinters, you'll see big, huge glutes on sprinters. You won't see big calves. You won't see massive calves. And if you look at some research, you won't see like the soleus, gets up to very high forces, but like between pretty fast running and super fast running, I don't think it spikes that much more, because I think there's so much more reliance on the Achilles tendon as it gets faster and faster, not necessarily on the muscle itself. But, and again, this is all anecdotal, but like sprinters have huge glutes. Distance runners don't have big glutes. Sprinters don't have big calves, and distance runners often do have big calves. So I think the faster you run, potentially the more distal tissues are more about contracting quicker rather than actually force production. Or no, that's wrong to say force production. Rather than like concentric pushing me off the ground, it's more about isometric contractions. The more distal the tissues are, I think, potentially.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Did I explain that at all? Well,
they had a tendon paper on. They dropped turkeys. They dropped turkeys and looked at. They did a drop jump with a turkey, I think.
Punching rats and dropping turkeys.
And but this was a tendon one to show like the muscle tendon dynamics, and see how the muscle, when a muscle goes eccentric, concentric, does a lot. It does a lot of work, like requires a lot of energy or whatever. Yeah. But if it just does work by being isometric, then the tendon can do everything. And like the tendon doesn't require anything, because the tendon's like, who asked me this? They were asking about the differences in muscle and tendon, and like muscle contractile tissue. And it's like, the tendon is not a contractile tissue. The tendon is stupid. I guess, okay, I can't say completely, because there is some of the cells on the peritoneum are like fibroblasts that actually can contract. But for the most part, the tendon is just this stupid thing. Like there's not, your nervous system and your brain doesn't really have control over your tendon. You have the Golgi tendon organs, but like that ain't doing much. It's all coming from the muscle or the bones. And that's what's telling the tendon. Like the tendon is just this stupid middle guy. But yeah, a little bit of those cells that are working. The thing with development is like when you take a baby, their tendons are like all cells. And one of the theories was, the cell, they kind of know that they have to be able to support a lot of loads through life, and they can't contract like a muscle, so they lay down the scaffolding of collagen around them to protect the cells. I was like, that is, I mean, if that's made up, that's a fascinating thing though. It's like these cells are like, I need to protect myself. I know what's coming when you get bigger, so let's lay down a ton of scaffolding, and basically the cells die off or they go away. Now like your tendon is basically all collagen. There are cells in there for maintenance, but yeah, basically all collagen. So it is fascinating. But yeah, the tendon can just sit there and be this dumb guy that has no oxygen demands, and just takes a beating and can withstand until you try to deadlift 550 and tear your lat.
Tear your lat. You're starting to come more and more over to the like looking at the structure. You're starting to come more and more. Look at the structure. That should tell us like what these things were kind of built to do. Not that they couldn't do other things. Side. You're coming to the dark side, and the more you come to the structure, the more you start to think about biomechanics. And people trying to disregard biomechanics even for patellar tendon. It's a stupid thing to do. Part of understanding biomechanics is also part of understanding like when someone squats. I'm trying to put a shit ton of load. Yes, I want to make your quad stronger so that your tendon feels better. But someone squats doing a good morning squat. You need to be able to see that so that your biomechanical knowledge can help you make the quad stronger. You know what I mean? So, yeah. So same with a leg press. You put your feet up too high. You like put your feet down lower on the plate. You're going to get potentially more quads. So like starting to come over to the dark side of understanding seeing how people that disregard biomechanics, it sounds great, but you can't train anyone because you have no idea what you're doing. You know? So
yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna have to put a disclaimer at the start of this podcast that nothing we say here is factual. It's all been like potentially true, but also potentially not. So not because of like the science side of things, but because I don't want people to say that we're just it's pseudoscience. Like as in you're just we appreciate and acknowledge that what we're saying may or may not be correct here.
I know, but you know what? I was big on this. You know, James the Thinker Smith.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was him and like Raymond Verheyen. Like they're very objective minded guys, and I was big on that for a few years, and um, I guess I've kind of shifted to be like I want to make more money with my business, and like I've been wrong so many times, so I don't care. I'm gonna be hyperbolic. It's more entertaining that way. Like listening to Jill Cook speak is so entertaining because there's this everything she says is so definitive and yes and no, and she's probably wrong on a lot of things, but it is entertaining. So
Mm-hmm.
I like being that way, especially. I mean, dude, your Instagram and business, whatever, it's blown up, and like I was kicked off IG for like 2-3 months. I don't know. I come back on like you and Matt Watson. I was like, dude, you guys are just taking over, and I haven't seen any of this. But the
I sent you a
the
message. I was worried about you. I was like, this guy is.
yeah, I did appreciate that.
I sent you an email. I was like, where are you?
Yeah. But that's kind of the point I've got to where I'm like the correctness of my statements or whatever. I'm like, dude, in a week, I'm going to probably disagree with a lot of what I say. And that's just going to be probably for the rest of my life. Like, how much of tendons am I going to understand? Maybe 0.05% by the time I'm dead. And if I can be hyperbolic in the meantime, I'll just be hyperbolic. Why not?
Yeah, but I don't mean that. I mean, like, I 100% put your thoughts out there, not be afraid to say something. But also, 100% we reserve the right to be wrong and change my mind at any stage.
Yeah.
That's what I mean, 100%. So here's what I think, but also I'm happy to change that at any stage if you present the evidence to me, or not even, I don't even need evidence. I'll just swing swing wherever I like.
This is sorry, one with this is why the objective thinking and trying to educate in the most factual way possible. I'm really against that now because the memes that I use and the artful expression of like a Jolly Rancher Patellar and a bubblegum Achilles, like you want to put that on a research paper? You can't put that on a research paper, but it's like it helps me understand, and it's my way of understanding, and I think other people can probably get the concept better than saying a stiff patellar compliant Achilles.
Yeah.
If I tell you it's like a bubblicious down at your ankle, you know, you're gonna probably get it a little bit better. Even if it's
wrong. How much, because I actually wanted to ask you a little bit about this, like how much better for business is it when you post memes versus not posting memes?
I don't know. So like I can experiment with multiple pages, which is kind of my benefit having those for a long time. Like my cluster page, I just like, so I had a Spider-Man meme where it was like a skinny Spider-Man. He does 8x5 and then he gets bigger, 10x4, 12 by bigger. I probably made like a few $1,000s off of just posting this one meme. So it's like the more I can experiment with these stupid things, they just, like on Twitter too. I posted that one on Twitter and that thing just blew up. And you can look at the traffic that comes in person. And like my program's only $47. So that's probably why one reason why I just like anyone has a question on the program, don't ask me questions, buy the program, leave me alone.
Yeah.
Like it's worked for thousands of people, just buy the program. But it's just experiment, and it's just chaotic, man. It's like you don't know what's going to take off or what's not going to take off. And I know like you and Matt are doing your things with seminars and other products and whatever. And I'm just a slow guy. And I'll get to the point where I do some more things. But in the meantime, I'm going to release this tendon resource whenever I get around to understanding it well enough. And these talks help me because I can try to explain them to you, and then I can
realize
I can think for the next few hours of like, wow, that I really cannot articulate my thoughts well. I don't understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah. 100%. Podcasting has helped me so much over the years. Being on guest podcasts and doing Instagram. I would be 10% of the smartness that I am if I didn't have social media. just if I wasn't personally posting on social media and doing podcasts, and I'm not saying I'm very smart at all, but I wouldn't be anywhere near as good a coach or clinician as I am. Nowhere near. Just because I have to try and articulate my ideas better. So it's good.
Yeah.
You're like the ultimate. If business coaches would like use you as the ultimate case study, you know the way they love talking about niches? Like you have the best niche. Here's my description of your niche. Male basketballers who want to be able to dunk, 1, want to be jacked, 2, and then end up hurting their knees, 3. So it's like a constant circle as well. Like, you know. So like I try and dunk, I get knee pain. I fix my knee. I try and dunk. But along the way, like while my knee is sore, I start lifting, and now I realize lifting feels good. So now I want to get bigger. So now I buy your other programs and stuff, and it's just like it's the perfect niche. It's the perfect niche, and you can serve them in many ways.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of look. I don't give. Yeah, I kind of look at why it is that way, and it's like I saw this once from someone else. They're like, what are people's insecurities, and then monetize their insecurities, and you can make money.
Kier, probably,
and that's what it is.
I'm certain it was Kier.
Okay, I don't know. I don't think it was Kier, but it was someone. Yeah, and but that's what this is. I just have kind of documented my journey of being small, and I was really insecure about being small, so I got big. And then it's like, okay, I got big, but I got like slow and useless from the powerlifting and bodybuilding training. So then it's like you can find some research on clusters, and it's like, there you go, get big without losing your speed. And then I'm like, then I decided I want to dunk after my knee got healed. I want to dunk. And then I started dunking, and it's like my knee's blowing up again. And I went through patellar tendinopathy like 4 or 5 times. So then it's like doing that. And now it's just like the research side. But having those few things, I don't know what would come next. Maybe I have to like rupture my Achilles, and then I can give some Achilles rupture advice. Like
there's not enough lat. There's not enough lat out there.
Oh my, no, there's not. And that's probably what has decreased my curiosity towards it. Is like I'm not going to take an active role in this lat tendon. It's going to give me some understanding of the tendon healing process, which has made me appreciate it. I've read it a number of times, but then you look at it and it's like, I mean, and what do they probably base a lot of this off of animals though too, but it's like it's weeks and then months. Like you have the inflammatory proliferative remodeling phase, and it's like I posted about that yesterday, where like you tear that thing and then all this blood comes in, but your body needs to put a cork in there to stop the hemorrhaging, so it puts fibrin in there, which is like this really bad scar tissue, and then collagen 3 comes in, which is another scar tissue, and then collagen 1 comes in to make it linear again. But that whole thing takes months. Mm-hmm. And like you just appreciating the thing. If I didn't appreciate the thing, I probably would have ruptured my lat tendon already again by trying to do something stupid. But yeah, there's not enough lats out there. Like who cares about the lat tendon protocol? Nobody.
No one.
Don't dunk basketballs hard. Don't deadlift 600 pounds, and don't have copious amounts of muscle mass, and your lat tendons will probably be fine.
A hip impingement will be a good one for you. You should start jamming your femur in as hard as you can for like 12 months, and you'd end up with some kind of impingement type symptoms, and you could monetize that nicely.
Have you ever thought this? I mean, dude, you're doing a lot with your business, but I've been pretty much ever since I've started, maybe it's been a decade, like 24/7, I'm thinking about, I'm working on something, you know, but I think it was Alex Hormozy, or no, maybe it was Mark Bell. They were talking about training, and they had got their actually it wasn't either. It was Rhino, Stan Efferding wrote The Vertical Diet. Probably deadlifted 600, squat 500. He did all this hard training for years. And now he's like, he just needs to train once or twice a week to maintain. And he was talking about, he's done the labor, and now he can take the fruits of his labor.
Yeah.
And me tearing this lat and not being able to train anymore or dunk or really do anything. I just went on and started posting dumb memes on my hypertrophy cluster page. And it's like, kind of realized for myself, like I trained for so many years and did so much work training myself, training athletes, doing all the research, that when is the time where I just chill?
Yeah.
And that was like, I had a few weeks where I'm just going to find stupid memes. I'm getting testimonies every single day, which will support them. But that stage where it's like, I don't need to like work this hard anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever thought like that.
Yeah, I think about that all the time, thinking about like doing something that scales, like doing it potentially, but even social media is not frustrating, but in that way, you still, if you stopped posting well, I don't know, I'm guessing that your revenue dropped when you didn't have your Instagram page.
Yeah, I just use I started using Twitter a little bit and then my email list.
Yeah.
But I also took like 2 weeks where I'm like, I get really emotional. Like that's probably why I am like the what do they call it? Entrepreneur. What do they call it when you're by yourself? Solopreneur. Yeah. That's probably why I am this way, because I hate working with people, man. I hated authority. I didn't want to listen to anything, and I just want to do things my way. So just being that person, period, you're kind of a more emotional, like whimsical person, and that's just who I am. So like, yeah, when I got kicked off IG for whatever reason, I'm just going to isolate for a while, and which for me is sometimes a bad thing to do, because I isolate and I don't want to talk to a soul. But sometimes it can be good. But that's probably why I started the business. I would have to assume that's probably kind of why you must have started. Do you really want to go work in some clinic or go work for some other person and have authority figures over you?
No, I couldn't ever work. I can work with people, but not for anyone ever again. You know, I really, really don't do well. You know, there's people talk about this bullshit phrase of like, how you do something is how you do everything. That's bullshit. I was the worst at school. I barely scraped past every exam for my entire life. I had mastered the art of getting 40% in every exam just by asking my friends, like, tell me what you've been studying for the last 6 months. And like sometimes they'd fail and I'd come out and pass, and like, they'd hate me for it. But I just pass. I was shit employee for every job I ever had. And then I started this thing, and now I'm a brilliant employee for myself. You know, but I'm very clear with our business what I want it to be and what I don't want it to be. And I don't want it to be high main. I don't need it to be this world domination thing. I want it to be very successful, but I am not willing to sacrifice. Like, I don't want to have 20 people working for me. It's a lifestyle business. That's what it is.
Yeah.
I think you were similar.
I struggle with a lot of this. I do go on to get business advice, whatever, because I'm like doing it all on my own. So I'll seek things out like that. But it's really hard for me to listen to other business, and probably to my own demise. But I'm like, I am who I am. But it's like people telling you this is the way to make money, and I'm like, I made $0 for like 5 years online, and I could have followed all the business advice in the entire world. And it's like, who would have thought that today I would be one of these guys with the patellar tendon? Like 3 years ago, I didn't know a single thing. I didn't even know.
When I tagged you in that story, I was laughing because I took a screenshot, because the question was like, who's great with patellar tendon rehab, or who's the best or something. And like, I just went on your page and took a screenshot of you sitting there in like a singlet with your hair all over the place in a sling doing a leg extension. I just tagged it. I was like, this guy, somehow it's this guy. It's the best. I just thought that was so funny. I was sitting on my couch, just like, that's the perfect example of the world we live in now. Like, you could be whatever the fuck you want, and it just, you don't have to listen to anyone.
Yeah. But I'm like, and you try to look at like the way things have worked for you might not continue to be the way things are going to work.
Yeah.
But I do keep that in the back of my head. But I'm like, if I just look at the history of what has been successful for me, is like, I just have done my own thing, and I've documented the work that I've done for like the years leading up. So
yeah,
yeah, the tendon thing for me is going to take out even more. But I'm like, I'm only 3 years in,
Yeah.
so I give me another 2, and I got this thing on lockdown. I guess the
Yeah.
patellar tendon, like the rehab program is great and it works for people. I'm just now curious on the whole digging into the science more, and
Yeah.
you know what? Maybe it's not. What are the practical takeaways I'm going to get after months of reading these tendon books? Maybe there's one practical takeaway,
Yeah.
but I don't care. It's interesting to me.
Yeah, you'll be the guy that knows that stuff, like if there's questions there. And also, more importantly than anything else, you always remember that you have proved unequivocally to yourself that when you set your mind to something, you can do it. And that is such an underrated thing. And that is what a lot of people I know are missing. You know for a fact that now, if you want to set your mind to anything else, pretty much like you can learn anything else. You started you zero knowledge about this stuff, and now you're one of the people in the world. That is a very powerful thing to just know. You have that faith. Because how many other things in your life have you in the past? You're like, yeah, I think I want to do this thing, and then you end up kind of quitting, or you end up like not quite following through, or just kind of half-arsing it. That was me for years. Just not doing something, not following it through for good reason. A lot of the time, I just didn't like it. But now I have proof that if I want to do it, if I truly do. So the question is not can I do it now? It's should I do this? Is do I really want to do this thing? So that proof is important.
Have you one problem I've gotten recently, and I guess you might be different. You mean you work? Are you married now? You're married, yeah.
Yeah.
You and your wife are dude. So like I do everything on my own.
Yeah.
Everything. And I have people I have some of my boys I hang out with and train and play basketball. The lat tendon has turned me no basketball, no dunking, no heavy lifting, which is like our community thing we do. So I've just kind of stopped hanging out so much. But I have such a hard time when I'm like working on this thing and doing it all on my own and have this vision for what it's going to become. And then the people around you are just working some 9 to 5.
Yeah.
It's like I don't want to say like it's lonely and it sucks, because it's like I kind of did it to myself by like if I worked in college right now, I would be complaining for hours about athletes and coaches and everything, but there would be a community around me that I could do that with. But then you go and you do the business on your own, and it's like you're completely I mean, you have people you work with, so like I'm completely isolated, and then your boys who you've been with your whole life, they actually somewhat try to sabotage you because you're like
relate to you.
And if you're going to tell them like I'm trying to take this to 7 figures, they're going to be like, they don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
They don't like that.
Yeah.
So it's tough. It's tough being around that. And I think it actually really, I don't know if it inhibits me, but I think it does.
It 100% inhibits you. Absolutely it does. Never, that doesn't mean you have to like cut these people out of your life. Like, absolutely not. But there's a reason why that if you went to Silicon Valley, there's all these secret clubs. Like Elon Musk there's a reason why they pay to be in the rooftop, or a membership in the tennis club, or in these elite secret like gentlemen's clubs. It's because, or whatever the fuck clubs, it's because they're around other people who are like them. That is so important. And I don't have much of that. I have very little of that. Like Kira is not that person. We just can't. She is working in the business as well as me, but she has her stuff to do. I have my stuff to do. It's not, we can't talk about business in that way. We can talk about things that we need to do, but we can't have conversations around it, because actually it was like a massive sledgehammer hit me several months ago where we were having an argument, and she said like, I'm starting to become like an anxious person. And I realized like this is my fault, because it was me trying to like drive the business forward and trying to get her to be better at stuff, when actually that's not what she signed up for, So that hit me. That was like a moment of clarity that I've never had in my life ever before, ever. When she said that, I'm not like I'm a very logical person. I'm not the most emotional. Some people have these like, that song hit me so hard, like every single day it's something like this, or I read a line and it just hit me. That thing hit me when she said that. And it wasn't like big thing. But when she said that, I realized like I'm putting pressure on her without realizing it in this way. And actually, I can't do that. So I can deal with it, but she didn't sign up for that.
Yeah.
And neither did your
Wow.
friends. And they will try and sabotage you. Of course they will. Not because they're bad people, but you're living a different life to what they're living.
Dude, and I think the moment for me that really, when before I got my Division I job at Youngstown, I lived in the same area my whole life, and I started the business. I started putting stuff online. And it's like my closest friends would be like, "What are you doing?" Like, like they wouldn't say that, but it's like they give it that energy of like, what do they say, like crabs in the bucket thing? You're trying to get out, and they pull you back down. They're like, "Dude, why are you writing these articles? Like, you're not good enough to be doing that. What experience do you have?" Whatever they wanted to say. And then I got that job in Ohio. And I moved, which was like 12 hours away. I didn't know a soul out there. And I was there for 3 years. And that was my time to like isolate and be away from everyone that I knew who was giving me advice. And I realized I was actually dating a girl at the time. And I didn't want to date her. I dated her for like 3 years. And I don't think I should have dated her for a single day. But all of the advice that all my friends and family gave me were like, hey, because they were just like, you'll work it out. You'll find a way to work it out. You're supposed to go through tough times. Then I moved to Ohio, and I'm like, a month in, I'm like, I don't want to date this girl. Like, I can finally think for myself. So I got rid of all that influence. But I definitely think, being around your closest friends was like, you're trying to pull out of their life because they're still enjoying going to whatever spots you guys hit up, and then going to the gym, and they enjoy the routine of everything. And then it's really abrasive for you to be like, don't you want a better life, bro?
Yeah.
This is lame.
Yeah.
And I still kind of do that. I always do that to people, of like trying to look at what's coming next. And you realize that the majority of people are not about that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good and bad thing. It's what allows you to be in this, especially in this industry. And I've said it so many times on so many podcasts. If people study for 10 minutes a day, they'd be at the top of the industry in 2 years. Easy. It's not difficult, but they won't do that. And that's a good thing, because it allows people like you and I to actually make a lot of money and do good stuff, because you just realize that you can separate yourself pretty easily. But also on the flip side, it means you're isolating yourself more and more from people like that, which I don't mean that in a bad way. Like, it's important to have people in your life that aren't in any way talking about business or thinking about this stuff at all. It's so important. And it's not like the value of a person. They can be amazing people, but I just don't want to work a 9 to 5. I don't want to do what my dad did for 30 years, which is work in a job that he actually didn't give a shit about, and just live for the weekend. I don't want to do that, So I don't know. It's tricky. That's why community, like podcasts, can be good. Listening to podcasts can be good because you get to listen to like-minded people. It's almost like you're hanging out. That's why podcasting, I think, is so good, because it's an intimate form where actually it feels like, you ever listen to podcasts and you feel like you're friends with the person that you're listening to? Like, you can relate to them.
I don't know if I've had that.
I do. Not that I. Yeah, I do. We all do. They're in your ear for like an hour. So yeah, you're the average of the 5 people you spend most time with.
Recently, I've been listening to those Tendon podcasts, which are trash. And then I've been listening to my friend started a college strength conditioning podcast and talk about all the problems at college strength. So I'm like, this is comical, man. Like, I don't care about any of this stuff. But the guy has a good vibe. So, but yeah, I do have, one of my friends here, from high school is like, he's has nothing to do with this world at all, but I can tell him that I'm on every day. I'll be like, yo, how much you make today? And I'll just be like, yo, I'm running up the bag, man. And he will celebrate my victories.
Exactly.
And he's like the only guy who can do that. But I'm like, I appreciate that so much, that you and it's authentic. Like he genuinely can be on my side. But it's crazy to see that a lot of people in your life are not. It's crazy.
Yeah. You should. If you think it's bad there, you should come to Ireland and see it. You can't drive a nice car here. Everyone will hate you. If you drive a fucking new BMW here, everyone hates you instantly. If you go to America, at least there's the idea of the American dream, which is like there's a little bit of applause for like he has a pair of balls on him for going to do this thing. If you show any little bit of ambition in Ireland, they will pull you down so hard. It's amazing. Keir talks about that. England is quite similar, I think, but at least there's an idea of the American dream. People appreciate someone trying to get ahead, but yeah, maybe it's still there as well, though. Tall poppy syndrome. You try and cut the head off the poppy. Okay, where can people find you that don't know you?
Instagram, Jake Tuura, Tuura, and my Twitter. You are not on Twitter at all, are you?
No, I can't. I gotta stay away.
Okay, yeah. So I go on Twitter every once in a while too. But yeah, those are basically my two spots. I have a podcast, Jacked Athlete Podcast. I'm probably, once I get done reading these tendon books, I'm going to have so many questions, and I'm going to reach out to all of these researchers to answer the questions for me. Problem is, I got to figure out how to get them on, because some of them do not benefit whatsoever from getting on a podcast, so they might need monetary compensation.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah. I was going to say something else. Have you gone on Threads?
No, I don't. No, I don't think I will. I was off social media for a week, and came back, and there's this Threads thing going on, and I'm like, I don't care to look into this.
Yeah, I might. I don't think it's available in Ireland yet, so I might have a look at it, because it passes over your followers from Instagram automatically. And I feel like you could make some good sales there through text-based stuff. But mostly for me, I've just focused on making Instagram as big as possible. Mm-hmm. And that's been a good thing. I put all our resources there, and then have the podcast for people who want to like really binge. But it seems like you've done a good job with YouTube as well.
Yeah, I haven't done YouTube in a long time, but I think that's one thing. Where you said when you stop posting IG, you're basically gone. If you stop posting Twitter, you're basically gone. I think the benefit of YouTube is
you're around.
There. You go search YouTube Patellar Tendon.
Yeah.
You'll probably see one of my videos, which are like 70 of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I am like, I had a time where I just pumped out these different Patellar Tendon videos, and I think those are ones that stick and they stay, and people are going to keep finding them. So I think that's a platform where it's like, I can just disappear and people will still know that they'll still find my content. But you go away from IG or Twitter, it's like you're gone.
Yeah, I know that's an issue for us. Okay, man. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.